Hello everyone! Today I'm replying on behalf of Logicked to a video directed at him by a YouTuber called Caramelcorn. Caramelcorn? Let me Google that. Oh, candy popcorn! Okay, where was I? Oh, yes. So, Logic told me to reply on his behalf because, well, I could tell you that it is because our great reptoid overlord with his super demonic cold black heart feels bad about replying himself, but that would break the fourth wall, so instead I pretend that he has no time.
Hopefully the volume level's okay.
Sounds good from here, Mr. Candy Popcorn person. Bring it on.
The Logic asked me two questions. He asked me, is my faith fact-based or purely emotional? For me, that depends on what you would consider facts.
You know, facts are, or at least ought to be, facts for everyone. Something that is objectively proven to be true, no matter what the person thinks. For example, humans need oxygen to live. That is a fact. You can make several experiments and measure it to objectively prove it to be true. And it will be true no matter if you believe in it or not. So, do you have such facts?
I have my own set of facts that I think leads me to believe what I do. You may disagree with them, but I'm going to lay them out, what I believe the facts are.
In other words, you have things that you consider factual and other people don't. That means that either you believe something to be factual that isn't, or other people believe something to not be factual, even though it is. Well, that's an easy one, luckily, because opinions don't matter. All that matters is evidence. So let's test your facts and see the evidence behind it and find out if they are, in fact, a fact.
I believe, I know that sounds emotional, but I think that with people in my family being biologists, I have a biologist mother. I don't know much about science, don't know much about any of that, but my mom was a biologist. She has had, there's been no successful proof about evolution.
Okay, so, from the last to the first, whether evolution is true or not has no impact on whether or not there is a God. So, if someone would manage to disprove evolution, that would not prove your God whatsoever. You said you don't know much about science, which is okay, most people don't. But if you are going to make a scientific claim about evolution, such as,
there's been no successful proof about evolution,
then I want to know on what you base your assertion on. I want to know the scientific papers you refer to or the books you read. However, the only source you mention is your mother, and that raises a double flag for me, because a human opinion is not factual evidence. People can be mistaken and have proven to be mistaken very, very often. And on top of that, she is your mother. So you probably also have a bit of an emotional bias and tend to trust her more easily. That is not enough evidence. I need factual evidence, not just your mother's opinion.
Now, I'm not wanting to get into the evolution debate. I've been through that debate several times. This is not a creationism versus evolution type thing.
I would really be curious to know more about these so-called debates you had. But yes, it's an off-topic, so let's get back. What is your evidence for a God?
There's no real solid basis for not belief. Like, I'm wanting to say this without sounding preachy, which is an issue because it's always going to sound like I'm trying to force my belief system on people, but I'm not trying to.
I personally don't find it particularly preachy, but it still makes me cringe because it is a horribly flawed way of thinking. When you say there is no real solid basis for not believing in God, you implicitly also admit that there is no real solid basis for not believing in the flying spaghetti monster, the pink unicorn, or in your case, evolution. So why don't you believe in the flying spaghetti monster, the invisible pink unicorn, or evolution? I can tell you why. Because there is a very solid reason not to believe anything, no matter how much evidence people claim there is for it. And that is, you haven't seen this evidence. In other words, nobody can or should be angry at you for not believing in evolution if you have never been shown solid evidence for it. Now, if you have been shown solid evidence for it and you still don't buy into it without real reason, that is a bias on your side. But that's beside the point. The same way you have the solid reason not to buy into evolution unless you actually saw the evidence for it, I don't have to believe that you have solid evidence for the existence of a God unless you show it to me. The burden is on you to prove it.
Here are what I believe to be the facts. I have been stopped short of committing suicide multiple times. I have fallen asleep at the wheel only to have hit my horn at just the right moment before veering off the road and having a fatal car accident multiple times. And that's fact, because I have sleep apnea and I cannot sleep during the night very easily. And so during the day when I drive, sometimes I get too sleepy and I'll fall asleep at the wheel.
Candy, the reason you're still alive is because you fell asleep on your horn. And the reason you ended up in that stupid situation in the first place is because you were careless enough to step into a car in the first place, when you were clearly not awake enough to drive it. There is nothing godly about it. Also, why would you say that God is responsible for you not having an accident, but you don't also give him the credit for your sleep apnea? Wouldn't your God be slightly smarter to let you sleep and rest so that you don't fall asleep in the first place? I mean, this is utter incompetence. You should really fire your God. And I'm not 100% kidding there, because your belief that there is a God that saved you from dying keeps you away from the thought process you should have instead. And that is that you should take responsibility for the fact that you acted irresponsibly by driving in that state, and you should take responsibility for your body by having proper rest, maybe have a few naps in between if you cannot sleep well at night, maybe try to counter the sleep apnea if possible, maybe go to an allergologist, maybe get some medication, maybe have some diet if it is related to weight, I don't know. But instead you sit there and thank Mr. Invisible Sky Daddy for waking up from the beep produced by your own head.
And there have been times where I've lost things that I could not find worth a darn, and then months later they'll pop up out of nowhere.
I took a freshly washed stocking out of the washing machine one day, and I turned away for just a second, and when I turned back, they were gone. They were gone! I looked everywhere, but there was nothing. They were not to be found. Instead, I found them months later, dissected and ripped into pieces. In the cat box, they had the shape of an old fisher's net. And I knew back then, right away, the big Sasquatch spirits in the Rocky Mountains gave me a sign. They wanted me to get fishnet stockings. Candy, come on, seriously?
Those to you may be coincidences.
Yes!
What about also the times where I wasn't a Christian? Because there were times where I just denounced Christianity 100%.
So what you're saying is that things also disappeared when you were a denouncing Christian?
Still had those moments where things were constantly being put in front of me that made no sense.
Oh, so there were things, but they just didn't make sense. Well, hey, at least you didn't misplace them and needed a God to find them a month later.
How can you describe? Let's go to... I'm bouncing all over the place. I know this, and I apologize. ADHD.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I feel ya. I suffer under millennial attention span sickness too.
How can you describe the wind? How can you describe that? You can't see it, but we know it's there. How on earth can you describe that?
Well, you know, on our Earth, above the solid and liquid matter, there are a lot of gases who flow around, of which most are either invisible or hard to see. Since the Earth moves and the gases are loose, they kinda get dragged around by the Coriolis effect and all kind of other weird things like changing temperature or humidity, and you feel the gases moving around on your skin, and you see the trees getting moved by those gases getting whirled around, and that's what you call the wind. And guess what? It really doesn't take you long to Google it. It takes you fucking 5 minutes.
Another thing of that being of this being stated is things are too complex. And I know I'm dumbing everything down. Like I said, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. Complex for things to just happen, to just come out of nothing.
Things you don't know anything about seem too complex to have a natural explanation, and therefore God. That's a non sequitur, man. It's like saying my shirt has a weird black spot, which I can't explain. It looks too black to be an ink stain, therefore it is a black hole. This is an intellectually lazy and dishonest opinion. If there was a god messing with air and producing wind, then the best way to prove it is still to not just claim it, but go out, research it, and prove it.
I have always stated that if I wasn't a Christian, I would be an agnostic, a creationist of some sort.
Why? Why? Why would you assume a creator by default? Hey, if I wasn't a devout teapot worshipper, I would still be an agnostic that also believes that some sort of tea made the earth. How can that not sound silly to you? How can you not understand the problem with this assertion?
Because things just don't add up for me in terms of evolution. And I've looked and I've watched videos on evolution. I've done very brief stints in looking into evolution. It just didn't make any sense to me. And even now, I follow mostly atheist YouTubers, and they've talked about evolution, and it still does not add up to me. It does not make any sense.
What doesn't add up about evolution? Do you have concrete critiques or questions? Because just saying it doesn't work doesn't really help me. Or do you discard the idea by default? I'm sorry, but not understanding something doesn't disqualify it. It also doesn't automatically prove a completely unrelated claim, such as the existence of a god, which, by the way, you still wanted to prove to me, remember?
I disagree with people like Ken Ham strongly. I don't agree with every creationist that comes out the gate. But I have doubts about evolution, and it just doesn't make sense that everything would have just happened.
That statement is very confusing. I have never heard any scientist describe either evolution or any other scientific discovery with everything just happened. And just to be clear, if you have no opinion about something because you didn't quite find enough information about it to firmly accept or reject it, that is a perfectly sound position to hold. But that is not what we are here for. You claim to have facts for the existence of your God, and not being convinced about evolution does not qualify as a fact to prove that.
It doesn't make sense that we just came from another animal or another species over time, because why haven't we evolved now?
What the? But we do still evolve. We didn't just stop one day and decide, okay guys, it's enough. Who told you that nonsense?
And I've had these answers told to me, but these are just things that I've talked about with other atheists.
Candy, I know this is hard for you to understand, but not every atheist knows about evolution and can explain it properly.
And the fact of the matter is, I've been through a whirlwind of crap that I should have died from. I should have not come back from. And the only way I can describe it is that somebody was looking out for me.
And here we get to the core of your belief. You had luck in a dire situation and it felt like someone was taking care of you. You know, there is no harm in feeling cared for. If believing in a god is what makes you tick, then go wild. But be honest with yourself and understand that at the end of the day, it is your emotions and not some sort of factual evidence that makes you believe in your god.
If you want to hear a good example, look up the book With My Eyes Wide Open by Brian Head Welsh, the guitarist of Korn. He's the person who, I said in the last video, has an entire song called Die Religion Die. So this dude is very anti-religion. He's a Christian, but he's a very anti-religion.
So he's religious, but he's also against religion. That is a whole new level of self-hate right there. I bet he's against organized religion, churches, etc. But if you were to ask him how horrible of an influence Jesus is, would he really have a negative word? I kinda doubt that. Religion is also not just bad because of the church. It is dogmatic poison and its damage goes much, much deeper than a bunch of people praying to a zombie. Look at yourself. You believe in creationism for the same reason Muslims believe in creationism. It's their holy book who tells them to, but that is just the outer layer. Let's go one level deeper, shall we? You trust what your mother tells you about evolution because she's a biologist. And you trust Jesus because he's the Son of God. In other words, you got raised to listen and believe instead of fact-checking, provided the person talking to you is an authority figure. That is also harmful to you because it never makes you question anything properly. But it goes even deeper. Until now, you have struggled to get one factual claim out, and that is partially because you can't quite pin down what a factual claim actually is. You instead talk about personal emotions, how you feel like there is someone caring about you, and how evolution just doesn't really sound right. And the reason you do this is because a religion teaches you how to think about something and demands that you don't question it. It doesn't give you any reasoning for it. It deprives you of the ability to critically examine the claim. It instead teaches you to use your feelings to regulate it, and then they use emotional blackmail to keep you in line. Religion is harmful. Not just to me, an atheist, but also to you. It is built to keep you obedient and gullible.
I just try to look at the world and try to piece it together to see what makes the most sense. That's how my brain works. I always try to see what's the logical outcome of things. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just try to do what I believe is right.
Candy, that is the reason why Logicked refused to reply to you.
I don't want to debunk him. Listen to him. He's so cute. All I want to do is pinch his little cheeks.
You're not some malicious sheikh who promotes Sharia. You're not some Kent Hovind retard who tries to set science back to the 18th century. Or a condescending asshole who wants to punch people he disagrees with. Or some Stalinist Canadian Prime Minister who gets off on punishment for wrong think. You're just a nice guy, admittedly thoroughly indoctrinated with fucked up ideas, but who wants just to get along with everyone. That is why you're watching atheists. You disagree with them, but you really enjoy them. And it just feels horribly mean to unpack the logic whip and slap it around your ears.
Unlike a lot of Christians, I don't condemn people. I don't tell them they're gonna burn in hell, because that's not right.
Yes, telling people they will burn in hell is not a nice thing to do. It is pretty sick, in fact. But don't you share their beliefs? Do you believe people will burn in hell, or don't you? Do you think that there is a God that wants people to burn? Or do you maybe think that that may be false too? And if that is false, what else is false on your religion? Is it right that a God watches while others abuse each other, abuse their children or his child, like the Abrahamic God did with Jesus? Think about it for a moment. Think about what you believe. Does it really make sense?
It's just difficult to explain. But I guess you're right. Some of it is emotional, but some of it's also fact. But we may disagree on what the facts are. I can't really explain. It's difficult to.
By what you said, there are no facts proving what you believe. The only fact there is that you have been indoctrinated to believing in it, and that you get reinforced to believe it for emotional reasons. Will you deny this? Do you really want this? Wouldn't you maybe want to believe what is real instead?
I just try to do what's right.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you really like what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much to the Patreons who are supporting me already, and have a great day.